Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Gensler, one area that appears to have nearly universal agreement is the benefit of a faster settlement cycle for equity securities. As you know, market participants seem to be confident in a T+1. My understanding is that you support these efforts. I appreciate that. I would just encourage the SEC to move ahead as quickly as reasonably possible so that that can proceed. I also think there's widespread support for fixing the money market fund rule by removing the link between the 30% weekly average liquidity and the possibility of imposing fees and gates. You and I have discussed this. I don't think there's a need for regulatory reforms that would eliminate or reduce the viability of money market funds as an investment, but improving this regulation would reduce the risk that I think the regulatory regime imposes now. I am concerned about the SEC not adequately fulfilling its capital formation mission. Last year's appropriation law instructed the SEC to deliver 2 reports to Congress by the end of June, which would help benefit small public companies. These reports are now past due. I certainly hope the SEC will submit those reports promptly. And you testified to the House that the SEC would have a report on GameStop and Robinhood by this summer. That report has not been produced yet. We got a week left in the summer. I do certainly hope that we will see it soon. Now let me turn to cryptocurrencies. And my time is limited, so I'm going to try to do this as efficiently as I can, Mr. Chairman. But I think I know your position, among other things, is that not all cryptocurrencies are inherently securities, right? That's true.
There are a small number that aren't, but I think that, as Chair Clayton said when he was in front of Congress, I think very many of these facts and circumstances are investment contracts.
So here's my concern. So some are and some aren't, is basically what you're saying. And I'm concerned that the SEC has not provided sufficient definition and explained how it would apply the Howey test, which I think is the court standard for determining when something is an investment contract. So for instance, stablecoins do not have an inherent expectation of profit. They're just linked to the dollar. Now, you might use them in an attempt to make a profit, but that's a second-order activity. Is it your view that stablecoins themselves can be securities?
I think that, Senator, they may well be securities. As Thurgood Marshall wrote in the Reeves opinion, in defining the scope of the market that Congress, wished to regulate, Congress painted a broad brush, and it actually included about 35 different things inside the definition of a security in the 33 Act.
I've just got limited time here, so I acknowledge that. Here's my problem, though. I think what you just said was that they may be securities, or that some are securities. To me, a stablecoin doesn't meet the second prong of the Howey test, that there has to be an expectation of profits from the investment. And so if it doesn't meet the Howey test, it looks to me like it's not a security. Now, maybe you've got a good argument for why some are and some aren't. My whole point is, I think we need to have clarity on this. I think you should publicly disclose this. Apparently, there are private conversations where you work with people who are proposing particular structures and you give them advice, or your staff gives them advice. I just think we ought to have that publicly, and we certainly shouldn't be taking enforcement action against somebody without having first provided that clarity.
Well, Senator, this Congress could change the laws, but the laws that we have right now have a very broad definition of security, including a note, including an investment contract and the like. And my predecessor, Chair Clayton, and others actually put out a lot of guidance with regard to the Howey.
I just got to push back a little bit on that. It is broad, but it's well defined. There is a very specific litany of the instruments that constitute securities. As you know this better than I do. Investment contract is one of them. And there is a court decision that lays out the prongs for what constitutes an investment contract. I'm just saying, as a layman who can read English, when I read those tests, stablecoins don't seem to meet that test to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but if I can interpret this. I think others could too, and some clarity, public clarity, I think would be helpful.
I see the red light, but I agree with you that some of these tokens have been deemed to be commodities. Many of them are securities, and the Supreme Court has weighed in a number of times. You noted the Howey test. We've talked about the Reeves test was in the 1990s as well, has weighed in, and I think that there's a fair amount of clarity. Over the years, the SEC has even found, believe it or not, whiskey caskets, and the courts agreed in the 1960s were investments. And I think that at the heart of our securities laws was protecting investors against fraud. They get to decide. They get to take the risk. You'll find I'm not negative or a minimalist about crypto. I just think it would be best if it's inside the investor protection regime that Congress laid out.
I see my time has expired, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.